JBH Boutique Care offers you a unique exclusive membership in our nationwide concierge medical services network. Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Judine Bontemps-Hill. I'm double board certified in family and obesity medicine. We pair exclusive personalized care with accessibility and convenience. A better way for you to receive immediate quality medical care. Whether at our main Orlando, Florida office, traveling across the U.S. or visiting the States, we bring you the best medical care without waiting for an appointment. Become a member today by calling 407-234-5282 or visit us online at jbhmeg1.com. JBH Boutique Care is proud to sponsor Sounds of the Diaspora, music and
Hi, welcome to this week's episodes of Sounds of the Diaspora. My name is Dion Parsin, and I'm really happy to have this special presentation tonight. We're bringing back two wonderful guests that we've had in the past, and we're going to continue on our conversation that we started a couple months ago about the evolution of the steel pan. Today is our volume 2 episode of the evolution and history of the steel pan. So please join me in welcoming to Sounds of the Diaspora again, Mr. Victor Provost and Mr. Leon Fster. Gentlemen, how you guys doing?
Hey, what's up, D?
I'm good. How's everybody doing today?
Good.
Excellent.
Good. Leon, you in the UK?
Yeah, taking in the heat.
Taking in the heat. Yeah, I know. I just left Europe. I know how it is over there. Vic, you did some traveling over there a while back also.
Yeah. Just a little, believe it or not, man, it was a vacation.
Yeah. All
right. Vacation.
Nice.
First vacation in
Nice.
like a decade. It's nice.
Nice. Yeah, well, it's been about 6 months or so, a little bit longer since we started this process of discussing the evolution of the steel pan and its origin and stuff like that. And I know you guys have been busy doing your own personal thing, and I commend you on carrying the torch for the steel pan. It's very important for the work that you guys are doing. But today we're going to continue that conversation with our volume 2 episode. But before we jump into things, just want to share with our audience briefly what we discussed, because we had a really good time talking about the evolution of steel pan in Trinidad and how it came about. We discussed tambu bamboo and the origins of playing the bamboo stick and the 1 and 2 note steel drum, and then how that kind of evolved into other drums and creating the what we know as a panyard and the steel orchestra. And we also discussed what a day in a panyard looked like and the hierarchy and how that's run. And we looked at videos that shared a couple of the rehearsal techniques with some of the great icons of steel pan. And then we ended the show talking about how the steel pan kind of spread. It's been adapted and accepted around the world. We showed some videos of folks in Japan and other parts of the world with their steel pan orchestra, and they were dealing, they were hitting it, It's so the steel pan isn't solely part of the Caribbean diaspora anymore. It's actually a world, it's a world topic right now. And I know you guys are teaching in institutions, so education is a part of it. I want to talk about that, how it kind of evolved into that, because the steel pan was kind of taught orally. Now it's in the school, so it's a whole nother technical stuff about it. But before we jump into the education, let's just kind of, I want to hear you guys take on why you think the steel pan is accepted worldwide, and who you cannot personally this person help to spread it, but like how that migration or exodus or the spreading of the steel pan kind of.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you could point the finger. Like sometimes we have
Yeah,
names. You know what I'm
you
saying?
could. I think you could. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So sometimes we have names. Sometimes those names are harder to come by. But
Yeah.
Fster, I'm gonna defer to you, man, to begin this question.
Yeah, I mean, and just like just to jump on what Victor was saying, I think it's a bit easier to maybe kind of pinpoint one or two people as to with regard to as to where it talks about how pan was created, because he had so many little things that was never really documented. But you had so many people, and bands traveling, and so on. You had the Desperado Steel Orchestra, who traveled, played in the Royal Albert Hall. They played at Carnegie Hall in the 1970s. Actually, Royal Albert Hall in like 1972. Carnegie in 1987, and they played with Pavarotti, sorry, and also Winifred Atwell. Yes.
Liberace.
And well, Liberace was actually Liberace was actually the Tripoli Steel Orchestra. Yeah,
that's right.
Tripoli Steel Orchestra, and so but also that helped with the movement of the instrument and so on. And they were actually Tripoli was actually the first band to be nominated for a Grammy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they lost to Muddy Waters. If I remember the date, I can't remember the date, but they were SO Tripoli at that time. So you had like those bands touring, and but I would want to say one of the first bands that actually really did a first tour would be
Tasco, right? Yeah, it was like the British World Fair, right?
Yes. So you can't talk about touring steel band and the spread of steel band music without mentioning Tasco.
Because that was the first time. That was the first time that like a Trinidadian steel band had really performed for an audience that size in Europe, right?
Yes, yeah.
This was like the early 50s.
We're talking I want to say 1948.
Okay,
somewhere around there between that, and around the Windrush time as well too. So it's around the same period. Right. But it was for the Festival of Britain.
Yeah,
in one of their anniversaries and so on. And crazy enough, people they weren't sure what to expect. So where they had actually stationed the band to perform was kind of under a bridge, if I'm not mistaken. And that kind of took people, by storm because of classics and then calypso music and so on. And at that time, they weren't playing on stands. They had people with pan on their laps and so on. And featured people like Sterling Betancourt, who was at that time one of the ping pong champions and so on. So, ping pong champions. So ping pong was what they would call the pan before. Right. And this was attributed to the Trinidad Music Festival. That was
one second, Leon, real quick. You mentioned the ping pong festival. Ping pong champion rather. Can you just kind of elaborate on that? Because for our audience, they actually think the ping pong game.
Yeah, especially after watching the Olympics, for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah, because pan. Because at that time, pan was more considered ping pong. It wasn't. Right. You didn't have this whole idea of steel pan and this beautiful sound that we had. It was more of a ping pong. So the tenor pans, especially, was more considered like ping pong. You had from doo-doo to they made all the biscuit tins. I think we kind of covered that.
All of the names were all like what's the word? Onomatopoeic. It's like an onomatopoeia when you the name of the thing sounds like the sound, right?
Just as how it sounds.
The doo-doo sound drum
was literally doo-doo.
Exactly. Ping pong sound ping pong ping
exactly.
pong.
Right. Okay.
So that's where that term come from. So you had like Theo Stevens and all these cats that won like ping pong championship, and this came through. They had what you call the Trinidad Music Festival, and 1948, Trinidad Music Festival around 1948. And in 1952, they opened a category for pan, which is crazy.
Right.
So, but then we fast forward, where bands started touring. So these were issues or instances where bands or pan started really branching off. There was so many things happening even around that time, and which we would get into a bit later on. But you had like even Pete Seeger and his work with steel pan in, let's say, around 1956.
Yeah.
And then
and that's like the Pete Seeger. I mean, you say Pete Seeger's name in the context of steel band, and some people don't realize that it's like it's the same exactly. guy. It's the guy that the
folk singer,
the folk singer that that led all of this the anti-war movements for during Vietnam. And I mean, he went to Trinidad and shot a documentary and actually like published a book on how to build these instruments in the 50s and 60s, right?
Yeah. So so you have instances like that where the instrument now, it's catching on like wildfire. I think people were just really so astounded by, especially with the Britain Fair, of the music coming out of that, and then of the interpretations of classics and so on. And as we alluded to, the Triple E Steel Orchestra, which is their original name was St. James Triple E, and then Sullivan show and so on. And there's still people that are alive today. Actually, well-known tuner in Miami, Michael Kernahan, we call him Big Mike. So if you need your pan tune in Miami, big plug to Big Mike. But he has so much history with regards to that, and being part of one of the founding members of that band at the time. So but I would push everything onto you now, Victor.
Oh man. All right. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that those are just like, those are a handful of examples of how pan like found its way into Europe, and of course through through the migratory work patterns of Caribbean people coming from Trinidad and from Jamaica and from the rest of the Anglophile Caribbean, going like Fster mentioned, the Windrush generation. There's some incredible video footage of Kitch, of Lord Kitchener the Great Calypsonian, stepping off the boat, stepping off the Windrush, and having a microphone shoved in his face by this British by this British press correspondent, is saying, "I hear you're the king of calypso. Sing me a calypso right now." And Kitch just straight into it, right?
London is the place for me.
London is the place for me. That's right. And so that's just a couple examples of how the instrument has kind of like has branched off, and of course it's exponential, right? So all you need is one person to plant a seed and have a couple students, and then those students have a couple students, right? Or these bands form a couple other bands, or have children, right? So it's like it becomes multi-generational, and then it becomes the tree, the branches on the tree, right? And so there's the examples of that in the United States. The clear examples for me are Ellie and Cliff, Ellie Manette and Cliff Alexis. Of course, there's many other names.
I'll jump in really quick if
please.
Like Russell Henderson, he had a little jazz club in London, West London. I can't remember the name of the bar, but he kind of split it up in two segments with the jazz band, and had like still in Betancourt as a steel pan player, and then eventually the set would change from a jazz set to a steel band set. And then that played a part in the Russell is a big contributor to the Notting Hill Carnival. That's spurred on based off of that. So and you're talking about 1950 something. So guys, based on all these little things, it just started branching off, and I think Europe really gravitated towards the steel pan. That's why it's like it's in quite it's in abundance throughout this area.
Yeah, man. I was in Luxembourg a month ago, and a month and a half ago, and I didn't know what to I didn't know what to expect. I went to do some teaching, some lecturing, and a guy comes in with a tenor pan. And I was like, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's every place, man. And the unique. So I think that this is like a good opportunity to segue maybe into the panorama competition, because what has happened now is that same kind of international exposure and that branching off into places like Switzerland and Alaska and Canada and South America and Japan and China. What's happening now is that every year for Trinidad Panorama, these players come from all over the world.
All over. Yeah.
Right. So when you look in a band now, in a band now in Trinidad, depending on the band, of course, you look in a band now in Trinidad, you see people looking all kinds of ways. Right?
All nationalities.
Yeah.
And I mean,
that's such an experience.
That really lends itself to how effective the steel pan has been, in just being an ambassador for music and just greatness and because again, I remember going back to like Louis Armstrong, going to Africa, during that time, and ambassador during the wartime over there, and bringing peace and the steel pan. When I hear these type of conversations and even just kind of in my own travels and see the steel pan, it's like it's an instrument that lends itself to that type of ambassadorial kind of lineage, because everybody embraces it. At some point, you don't even have to know the song they're playing. People just going to just gravitate towards it and be like, wow, this is great. How are you doing that? So I'm really happy that you brought up the panorama situation, because that's, to me, like the biggest, event that everybody kind of participates in, and that's kind of like the best of the best, and sometimes it's not about winning, it's just about participating.
No, it's always about winning, man. It's always about winning, bro.
I'll try to be political about it. You know what, man?
You know what I'm saying, though. You know what I'm saying.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's bragging rights. It's the trophy. It's the for your neighborhood or your community with the best playing band. I mean, and come to South have the best players. Come to Port of Spain. Come to Face to All Stars. Yeah. And people started gravitating to these bands in these areas with regards to Panorama, which I think a lot of people try to ask if it's a blessing or a curse, and I would never really entertain that, because that's where a lot of us got our first. That's our first music lesson. For me,
right.
The Panyards was my music theater. I had no music teacher. You go in there, and this is the first time a lot of us are being engulfed with scales or patterns and tonality and all that. Yeah, you're singing, but now you're being confronted with playing a song, and so it's I would say it's the best crash course. Anybody that's able to take that challenge, it's one of the best crash course you could ever have in learning to play pan, but also by extension, learning to play music. Rubbing shoulders with some of the best players around. Right. That's one of the best things here.
Yeah. Well, the panorama sets a standard, internationally, about just having a competition and being the best. So you all was gracious enough to share a video of one of the premier steel orchestras participating in Panorama. So let's check out that video and then we'll talk about it afterwards. But this is one of the bands performing in Panorama. I think it's in 2024, right? 2023.
I don't remember the video.
You remember?
I don't remember the video. We'll talk about it after.
We watched the video, then we'll talk about it after. Then refresh your memory. Let's check it out. Oh man, you gotta love it. You gotta love it. You know,
energy like that. Yeah. That's the arranger's son. I'm grandson.
Oh yeah. Wow.
Yeah, that's BJ Marshall's grandson. So the BJ Marshall is the most stocky dude in front of the band, the arranger of the band. Actually, the last shot was his daughter and her son playing next to her. So yeah,
it's a family affair.
Yeah. You know what? Well, that's how the whole thing was. That's how the whole thing was growing up. The community and these things help uphold the community at certain points. It's still do to a certain extent. But yeah, man, mad energy in that band too, man.
The energy, man. So that's the Metro Orchestra, Steelpan Orchestra, correct?
Yeah, Metro Steel Orchestra.
Yeah.
And that was actually Brooklyn. That was Brooklyn Panorama
last year. Not Brooklyn last year.
Yeah,
that was Brooklyn Panorama. Yeah. So you know, it amazes me. It's like the arrangements never end, man. And when you think they play some of the slickest stuff, they come around with something else, man. It's like
other stuff,
man. And they put all of this together. I mean, you know, we talked about in the first episode how sometimes they may change the arrangement overnight, and they'll just come in the next night and just stay all night, just rearrange it based on what they heard, or they went to a competition and something wasn't right, and they just, man, it's really, and to get everybody on board. That's what I love about the Steelpan Orchestra, man. It's like just hundreds of people on board. Just it's amazing. It's like
I think it's such a learned thing, because a panorama piece is somewhat of a broken sonata form. So you have your introduction, and then you have your exposition and your development and your recapitulation and so on. And but now you're talking about tunes that people would take. This is before it was like 10 minutes, so now at present it's like 8 minutes. So you're talking about guys taking months to write a piece, and compared to these guys coming out in at least 3 months, for the most 3 months. Or you're talking about Len Boogsy Shop saying, all right, we're changing the entire song, full development in one evening, but it's testament to how well the band is, how good the band is. Quality of players is extremely important and the trust in the arranger, whereas you have players, and Victor, you could attest to this, where whatever the arranger spits out, guys eat it up like food, like come on,
Yeah, and that's how you kind of rise through the ranks of the band, right? It's just like there's the recall, your ability to recall, to recognize pitch, but it's not just pitch. I mean, it's pitch, but it's especially rhythm. Because rhythm and phrasing is where the arranger will kill you, bro. The difference between most like the majority of people can't hear is 1/8 note that we
1/8 note move,
right? And if you can't catch, like if you can't hear that and catch that, then you're dead in the water. So the faster you recall, and get that under your hands, then you rise to the racks, because the arranger. So there's a couple things, man, that we should probably like unpack. That in the context of a panorama like competition, right? Like that song, like that we were just checking out. So that's an 8-minute, what we're calling like an 8-minute arrangement. So Fster, I've been on this petition to stop calling them arrangers because they're composers, man. They take a song that has less than 90 seconds worth of musical material, right? These are like pop songs essentially, right? It's like soca, right? And if you add up all the harmonic and rhythmic material, the sections, right, the form of the tune, the hook, the chorus, the verse, that's about 90 seconds of musical material that sometimes will just repeat, right? You have first verse, second verse, third verse. And the job of the arranger is to take that 90 seconds, and sometimes it's not even that, and explode that out to 8 minutes. Literally. Right? Yeah. So through, like Fster was saying, through development and variation and modulation, and to create to create this new music that has come to have a kind of an expected form, right? Yeah. Expected, like you were saying, it's a broken sonata form. There's usually like there's a modulation to the minor, there's a minor jam, there might be a major jam, and you get back to the recapitulation, and then an outro, right? Ending, coda, right?
Yeah.
But man, to take like the minimum amount of musical stuff, a phrase, one melodic phrase, and then spin it out into that much material is to me, it's equivalent to Bach taking of a phrase and turning it into one of his fugues. You know what I'm saying? It's a piece of musical information that's 2 bars or 3 bars long, and then it becomes a 6 or 7 minute piece. So I don't like calling them I like calling them recomposers.
You know what? And I would agree with you, because they're actually creating a derivative, a full derivative. Yeah. That they could actually, and they should, copyright for themselves, because this is their work being added to it. And the greater challenge, and the greater challenge now as compared to, let's say, 10 years ago, where you had people that actually wrote songs for pan, and so like DeFosto, who was a well-known calypsonian who died, Winston Scarborough, the original DeFosto, or you had Lord Kitchener, who was one of those first guys that were doing that, Mighty Terror. So
now, when you say wrote songs for pan, you mean wrote calypsos with the intention, with the intention of them being developed, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Right.
And they would have a bit more structure to them. Those songs would have a little bit more meat. In terms of chord changes, and you have your verse and chorus, your 32 bars followed by 16 bars and so on, and you had a bridge, so there was a little bit more to work on. So I think we listened to Pan in A minor in one of the bands in the previous segment. That's an arrangement, and that had so many things on it. This song that we just listened to was 1991 Black Stalin, Leroy Callis, which was a party song, Tonight the Black Man Feeling to Party. And I remember, funny enough, because I remember that watching the Calypso Monarch, which he actually won with my mother at that time. And that had a bit more music compared to what we have now. But you can see the transition from listening to Pan in A minor to the party songs that was really more focused on the groove. The party songs were focused on the groove. So now you're asking these guys now, okay, let's take songs with actually less information and not taking anything from the singers or what have you. It's just the nature of how the music is going.
Right.
To now still create 8 minutes of music, and I think I don't think they're getting enough credit to really create now with the little less of information that they have now.
I totally agree. And one of the things that I'm just going to put it out there, I'm going to ask for volume 3. with you guys. because the reason why
you want to keep your audience, Dion. I mean, you gotta
no, it's not that. As I'm listening to the conversation and the discussion between a arranger versus a composer, what we haven't talked about is the pans, the actual orchestration of the steel pan orchestra and the list of pans. We normally talk about the tenor and the bass, and maybe a double tenor and a guitar. That's 4 pans. That's 4 specific instruments within the orchestra. But you have the cellos and all of these other pans that have different range. And if you compare it to not even a choir, if you compare it to a symphony orchestra, we could sit down and match the tenor to the lead violin, or
of course,
and
exactly
so from a compositional standpoint, I want our audience to know what you're actually talking about for a range versus a composer, because as we listen to just that one recording of Metro Steel Orchestra, there's a lot going on. And it moves so fast, and go from one section to the next section. Even when they bring it down, to piano, bring it back up, and it's 8 bars of crescendo, and then it drops into something else. I mean, somebody has to figure all of that out before they even tell the pan sections. But they're telling like 10 pan sections or 8 pan sections at the same time. That's a whole nother level of genius right there. So that's what I'm talking about. I mean, I want to keep my audience. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of information.
I'm down.
We're throwing out there, but we're not really jumping into it either. So I'm looking at the response that we get, and there's a lot of questions that our audience has. So I would like to invite you guys back to just talk about the orchestration of the steel pan orchestra. I just wanted to put that out there, but. As we talk about arranging and composition, that leads me to just kind of throw out there steel pan in the education platform, because a lot of what happens in the pan yard is done by rote. And like you said, you write through the rack. Vicky mentioned you write through the rack how quick you can recall, but we all, now as professionals, we live in a world where people send us music, we learn it, and bam, we go do the gig. So there's different schools of education here. The steel pan, oral presentation in the pan yard, and then the academia that we all have grown to know as we develop and pursue music, and through academia, like Fster, you're pursuing your PhD. So that leads us to talk about steel pan in the academics. And Victor, you're educator now, so how do you feel about that? How does that work for you guys?
Well, there's a couple of things. The first thing is that we should at Fster, you can probably talk more to this. I mean, definitely talk more to this than me, because you have on the ground kind of experience. But like just like pan left Trinidad and went out to the world, and players started coming back, the same thing is happening with technology and education, and that's kind of changing the game on the ground in Trinidad too, right? So a lot of learning is still done by rote, and in some bands is done exclusively by rote, right? But a lot of bands in Trinidad now for Panorama Time have incorporated some form, right? Not necessarily on the player level, right? So like you're not going to go down there and see a bunch of players reading, right? And most of the players aren't learning from the sheet, but you might have somebody like somebody might actually arrange, right? Like Devon Stewart. Right. Devon Stewart's going to arrange on paper, right? Not here. He arranges at the pan, right? But sends it through Finale or whatever, right? So he has he has an arrangement here, right. And then that creates a whole new system of learning, because then that needs to go to a middleman, somebody who can read, who can call out rote, and then
who
also
can translate,
who can translate it to the non-readers. So that's something that's worth mentioning for sure. But this topic is one of the most contentious for me, because this is where I think we really find we find out, or we start to talk about the intangible quality of the pan that to me begins with the fact that it's a non-Western instrument with a Western tuning, right? So like, and of course the word Western is loaded in colonialism and white supremacy. So let's put that.
Which you can't get away from, to be fair, you know?
Right.
You can't get away
it's
from
hard
that.
to have a discussion without using this kind of loaded terminology, right? So especially if we're going to talk about music education. So in the music education world, the pan would be considered like a non-Western instrument, a world instrument, right? So what are some other non-Western instruments? Taiko, gamelan, right? Djembe, West African drumming, balafon, right? So these are instruments that don't have a Western, 12 note chromatic tuning. So pan is one of the only instruments that lives in both of those categories. It's an instrument that's of the African diaspora, and it was born and fired and raised in that system of teaching. And so when you remove it from that system and put it in a new teaching system, it becomes very difficult to navigate. And then that difficulty is exacerbated when you also remove it physically from its location, remove it culturally from its people. And then all of those things together get real hairy.
Of course. It does.
So
it does,
and you were no, I was just gonna ask you, man, you were at Florida Memorial, right?
Yeah.
You did like at least some undergrad work there. And to like in my I know you, and I know the guy, like I know a bunch of the guys that went there, right?
Yes.
And I'm familiar with Dr. Baston, but we may have met once. But in my mind, I always imagined that setting as a kind of a liminal space, like a in between, space. We always joke that Florida is like the North Caribbean, and
yeah.
The transitional space between the yard and academia.
Yeah.
It moved somewhat from New Orleans and came all the way down to Florida as that Caribbean space. And man, I mean, that's such a loaded area with regards to transition into academia. And actually, Pan in Schools was a program. We talk about Pete Seeger and stuff like that, but there was a guy in, I think his name was Nevin Saunders, that started one of the first steel band in schools in Trinidad around like 1956 in an RC school. And funny enough, people would believe that, they would think, well, Pan is from Trinidad, invented in Trinidad and Tobago. And I should mention that yesterday, the 11th actually, was considered International Steel Pan Day. So 11th of August. So and it was just kind of thing in cabinet as a national instrument. So and I digress from that. But so like in 1956, you had somebody, Nevin Saunders, that he started in an RC school, but it wasn't really prolific throughout the entire system. And then you had guys like Schofield Pilgrim, who started the jazz program at QRC, who had one of his first Pan students in Ray Holman. So in the 1960s. So and not really was trying to do a steel orchestra.
QRC is Queens Royal College in Trinidad, right? Yeah.
Yes, Queens Royal College in Trinidad. But he was really just trying to have this whole idea of Caribbean or Kaiso jazz or Calypso jazz or somewhat like that with regards to a new genre, which took off from there. But that's another example of Pan being in schools. Ray Holman took it on in 1970 and created an ensemble at Fatima College in Trinidad as well. So you start seeing this thing growing, but then within that time, you had pan already getting into some of the schools in the United States and in England. We mentioned Pete Seeger, and you have in England here Gerald Forsyth, who came and established a lot of stuff with regards to pan in schools. He was actually the officer, and my notes might be leaving me, but he was one of the education officer for steel pan here in the United Kingdom. So within that, we would, Trinidad, Trinidad was trying to play catch up now. And so in about 1980, you had a convention by Pan Trinbago, and they start where some people made, I want to make sure I have their names right, Miss Joyce Clement and Louise McIntosh. They made a plea, they were music teachers, made a plea to include pan in the curriculum as part of the curriculum. Right. And that initiative went on from there. So from the 1980s, you start seeing the growth. And this was also in retaliation, somewhat in retaliation to what was happening outside of Trinidad. So right. Pan was already getting into schools outside of Trinidad and Tobago, but not fully there. So you had little programs and so on. And so I'm gonna just kind of speed through that, and that led to Pans in the schools, led to the school music festival, which was then a music festival based on classical music. So anytime we talk about music festival, it was separate from Panorama. Music festival was now the classical portion of the of the culture of steel pan. But then we fast forward now, whereas people like Dawn Batson, Dr. Batson, Pat Bishop, and I must mention Al O'Connor, the late Al O'Connor, who started one of the first university steel bands proper, Northern Illinois University, 1973, if I can remember, and they were one of the first places to offer a degree in steel pan, and so you start seeing this thing growing now on a university level. Florida Memorial actually maybe was the second one. So we're talking from 73 to like
the 90s.
almost 2000, 1990 something. Yeah. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. And for us now, and I think Al was such a trooper, and he was an amazing guy, sweet guy. He's very true, very strong. With regards to the respect of the instrument, he brought in people like Cliff Alexis, who was a former tuner who passed away not too long ago. And then we saw the evolution of Liam Teague, right. Who is considered the Paganini of steel pan, So when you have that, from that time on, you start seeing this thing growing within the education system. However, to Victor's point now, it's whereas you guys can't read music, you guys you will get, there were certain instances we would experience when I was actually going to school at Florida Memorial where people were, you guys going with these garbage cans? Yeah, for sure. You guys can't read music, this, that, this was all, I look at this idea of now tertiary education and all that now as somewhat of a growth within the establishment that we are in, and as a plus to the instrument where, we gotta not catch up to everybody else, but make this part and participle of everything that we are about, and go on from there. But it gets very, very, very tricky with regards to who's teaching, how they're teaching, what are they teaching, and and I don't want to get too negative, but there is these are instances where people start using Panorama as part of their degree programs for PhD. They would go in there and then they would come back and put that on their resume. I helped this band win a Panorama, and that gives them, they have a degree, a PhD or what have you, and then they run in some of the programs. Some of these people actually come in some of the bands that myself and other people who are arranging for. And so that now takes away from the people who are really well qualified and who actually went to school, which they say you need to do, and can't get the gigs, can't get the jobs. Right. And this is how, so this goes towards the muddiness of what Victor is alluding to, because that now it kind of, well, not kind of, it impairs the growth of the instrument, or where the instrument actually could be compared to what you would see from in the university level most times, and in most universities where it's somewhat even at a primary school level in the Caribbean.
It almost kind of like parallels. I've had similar conversations regarding jazz, you know, and the whole like jazz and higher education situation.
Right.
Too, right?
It's an ongoing conversation.
Yeah, it's an ongoing. And again, man, I think that at its root, the conversations come from the fact that we're trying to force these, we're trying to force African music into a European system. And maybe the word force isn't like a good, I don't mean force as in like, I mean, we're trying to make it fit into a system. And what's happening is so Fster, those early school programs in Trinidad, right?
Mm-hmm.
That like Ray was running, right? When Ray started the steel band at Fatima College, was the experience of being in that band completely different from the experience of being in a pan yard, or was it an extension of the pan yard experience? In other words, was the teaching method the same? Was it right?
I can't speak fully to Ray's experience, but what I do know was you literally had a pan class, so it was pretty much an extension of what was happening in the pan yard.
Yeah, and see so the opposite thing happened when it came into American school systems and European school systems. Is rather than becoming an extension of the yard into the academic space, it was transformed into the American / European system and kind of enveloped by it.
By itself,
It looked like there was a couple quick questions to answer in the chat. So one question was the big stacks. No, it's all good. The big what were the huge stacked steel drums to the right of the stage during the Metro video? I think those are bass pans, right? And they have bass. They have some bass pans. Yeah.
Bass pans that's mounted.
Probably mounted bass.
9 basses and so on. I think that we could actually keep that for the third segment when we actually talk about the orchestra. Because
I want to say, man, one of the things that I've enjoyed, like here in St. Thomas, every time I see Panorama Neck, Rising Stars, they're like smaller group. They have this 28-inch bass drum that they reconstructed. It took the whole pan,
the rocket drum.
Yeah, right, and rip it open, not rip it open, but they kind of welded, like separated and add like another half a foot onto it or something within the diameter, not lengthwise, and it's huge. Man, that thing echoes for miles. You be like, I mean, during Carnival, you hear that before you see the band, and like. Man, one night I was in Yacht Haven Grand, you know what I'm talking about, and I heard this boom, 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 and I followed it, bro. It took me down to the Market Square. That's how much it was like, you know. Yeah. But man, the evolution of the pans have grown to the point where it's have affected the world in a positive way, and you guys are doing a great job. You know. We're almost out of time, but there's 2 more videos that I really, really want to put.
Hey, D, I don't know if you, I mean, I don't know if Melgo lets you play 2 videos, but if you only have time for one, you should play The Pan is Beautiful.
That's Foster's video.
So that would be the last one. The Pan is Beautiful is the last. It should be the last video you have queued up.
Okay. All right. Well, let's do that then. Let's do that. Let's play "The Pan Is Beautiful" by Leon Foster Thomas with NIU.
Okay. So that's gonna be a different video, but I like that one too.
That's a different one, but
that's a different one. Okay. What's the one, Leon?
I actually don't.
Is that sugar? I think it's Sugar Boom. Is it Sugar?
Oh, Sugar Boom Boom. We did a kitchen arrangement of Sugar Boom Boom for at the Northern Illinois University. I almost forgot about that.
Let's check it out. NIU Steel Orchestra featuring the one and only Leon Foster Thomas with their arrangement of Sugar Boom Boom. Sugar boom boom. So let me ask you.
I remember that arrangement, man.
let me ask you this, Leon. You were trying to encourage the audience to like sing the lyrics, or what was that? What was?
It was just trying to get them involved. Because I think it was a tribute to Cliff Alexis, and so that was the last time I was there. And they asked me to do the arrangements. I sent up some music, but we really, people started doing conga line outside, in the audience and so on. But again, the idea of the carnival vibe is just trying to get people involved, spread that vibe.
I could tell like there was something happening in the audience. I know there was some interaction, but yeah, man, sounds great, and it's just beautiful to see how the steel pan is just making its way around the world and just representing, and it's just positive. And from a cultural standpoint, man, it's broken out so many barriers. That's what I'm enjoying,
of course, to
see that happen.
Of course,
so
man.
Excuse me, you guys are doing a great job. We could go on and on, man, but I think
your sponsors will fire you, bro.
Yeah, no, it's not the sponsors. The sponsors would love for us to keep going because they get more marketed. But gentlemen, I think we're gonna have to just kind of reel it in here. We've covered a lot of terrain, and it's been really great talking with you guys. You all are doing amazing things on your own individually and together. Again, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. As I mentioned earlier, I would love to have you back. Hopefully, we can do it sooner than later. But I think our audience would really like to see and understand. We could put up a diagram of what the steel pan orchestra looks like and explain that. That would really kind of reel a lot of this in for them, because a lot of them don't know. Trust me, they're listening to it and they're enjoying it, but just to understand how it works, So we'll talk about that offline. But I just want to thank you again, Victor, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to kind of help put this together. And Leon, you're 6 hours ahead of us, and you're in the UK. I did a show last week over in Europe, so trust me, I know I didn't get off till like 2:30 in the morning.
Oh man!
So we really appreciate you taking the time, man. Both of you gentlemen, continued success to you both, and thank you again for your contribution to steel pan, its evolution, its continuum, and music in general.
I appreciate you, D.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you.
All right, Fster.
That was Victor Provost and Leon Foster Thomas in presenting the evolution of steel pan volume 2. And we really, really, really had a good time with these gentlemen. You could tell they have a wealth of information to share. And, we're going to have them back, as mentioned, because there's a lot more to discuss about the steel pan. But that being said, join us next week as we bring to Sounds of Diaspora, my good friend. We've worked together. He actually recorded on one of my CDs. Their friend and gentleman that's doing great things out there, the one and only Mr. Jeremy Pelt, trumpeter extraordinaire, educator, and all-around great musician. So thank you for joining us on Sounds of the Diaspora. It's been a pleasure presenting this show for you. All the best. Take care.
With artists and host Dion Parsin every Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on Source TV Radio Network, WTSN, Washington, D.C.